Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our service today, both if you are online and, of course, in person. Good to see everyone. Welcome also to Ros Dong, who is our certified minister assistant here at Vista Temple, and we'll be hearing Dharma talk from, so thank you. As well as Sterling, thank you for being here today and helping out. So in preparation for chairing the service today, I looked through a couple books that all came from Vista Buddhist Temple Library at one time, bookstore actually. And appropriately, I chose a little bit of a chapter from a book called You Have to Say Something, Manifesting Zen Insight. And the reason why I chose it was because of just the time of year we're in, the season, and it seemed fitting. And the short chapter starts, the title is Basho's Heart. The Zen poet Basho wrote, "Treading the mountain path, the violets fill my heart with indefinable gracefulness. Though no one pays any attention to the violets along the path, they still bloom, quietly, beautifully, elegantly. To these flowers, Basho extends his warm heart. If, unlike Basho, we see only the form of violets, we may think, why bloom here? Why don't you bloom in a beautiful garden where people will pay attention to you? But we have to see the violets as more than just material things. The violets also have power and life force. Set in the proper place, the material form of the violets works perfectly. The violets grow and bloom. But where does this life force come from? Is it something flowers just have? If so, then where is it? Is it inside them or outside them? We look, but we can't find it anywhere. Yet the flower blooms. This power, this life force, is produced by many conditional factors coming together. Out of this, all of a sudden, a sentient being comes alive. It's like touching your skin. Immediately, a feeling goes through every cell, and the whole body comes alive. Of course, the term life force is just a concept, but the actual life force is not a concept. It is nothing we can grasp. It's the activity that makes the material world come alive. This is why we must see deeply into the life of the violet. Through the material form of a violet, we can perceive the huge world at work behind what we usually see with our eyes. The working of the violet is marvelous and complex. Its roots spread out underground, working around rocks and penetrating hard soil. It lives by means of very complicated procedures, yet it is never confused. It just grows, supported by both the material world and the force of life. The violet blooms as just a violet, with nothing to compare it to. Basho is very sensitive to the beauty he sees. He shares the warmth of his heart with the violets of the mountain. His heart fills with indefinable gracefulness because the violets are themselves indefinable gracefulness. So we'll begin today's service with sutra chanting Sambutsuge, which is on page 33. So now Sensei Ros Dong will share a Dharma message with us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. As I say always, it's so nice to see you in person, but I also want to remember to welcome the Sangha that's joining us virtually. I forgot to mention that before. Out of sight, out of mind is kind of where I am. So let's get started. What did I do? Oh, I know. I got it. I have to admit, this is my first time stepping way out of my comfort zone. I am attempting to be in control of my own PowerPoint today. So we'll see what happens and as we go along. But what I want to talk about today, as I think you see on the slides, okay, is living a life of true happiness. Don't worry, be happy. So as I was pondering, talking about happiness, some songs came to my mind, and maybe you remember these too. There was a song by Bobby McFerrin a few years ago, "Don't worry, be happy. In every life we have some trouble. When you worry, you make it double. Because when you worry, your face will frown, and that will bring everybody down." And that was such a popular song. People of all ages were humming it and just seemed to be uplifted just by that little song. There was another song by an artist, Pharrell Williams, and his song was titled "Happy." And again, very popular. Come along and sing with me because I'm happy. Can't nothing bring me down. And it went on and on. And I don't know, those songs somehow, no matter where you are or what your circumstances are, if you hear those songs for a moment, you're going to feel happy. And then there was another song by okay, let me look at my notes. I know this by Bob Marley. How could I forget his name? a reggae song. Every little thing's gonna be all right. Don't worry about a thing. Every little thing's gonna be all right. And so that was another song. And I'm sure there are many others. These are just some that I happen to remember. And because I started out way long time ago as a preschool teacher, I would sing with my little kiddies, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And then there's a Zen version. In addition to finding songs about happy, later I'll talk about a book that mentions happiness. And also we're going to hear the Dharma through comics today. We know that the Dharma is everywhere, that if we pay attention, if we're mindful and aware, we can hear the Dharma everywhere. So I'm going to share some of my favorite comic strips with you in this Dharma talk. And so let's see if we get the next one. There it is. So this is the Zen version of if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap one hand. So as I said, there's a reason that I want to talk about happiness today. All you have to do is look around the world that we're living in, and you really want to see and hear more of the happy stories, more of the kindness and the goodness of people. But that may be hard to find. So maybe we have to generate it for ourselves. So I want to share at this point a book that we had a few years back in our book club. And it was a book by Anand Tupten, and it was titled No Self, No Problem, Awakening to Our True Nature. And in this book, the author devotes a chapter to happiness, and he titles this Inner Contentment, Giving Up Nothing But Attachments. And I want to quote what he says about happiness. Happiness is something we all want, even though we don't want to admit that all the time. It's the reason we are on the spiritual path. It is also the reason we are pursuing relationships, careers, and all kinds of accomplishments. All of our activities are motivated by attempts to bring about the happiness we all desire. So it is good to admit that we all want happiness. Sometimes we tend to get a little pretentious. We don't want to admit that we want happiness because it sounds shallow, unsophisticated. Since we are spiritual seekers, we think that we should at least have the pretense of wanting awakening or enlightenment more than happiness. But at the bottom of everything, happiness is what we all desire, end quote. But Anand Tupten goes on and he continues saying, there is nothing wrong with wanting happiness, but we have to define what true happiness really is. Happiness is not something we can achieve by accumulating things. And I think basically we all know that. Or by realizing our beautiful illusions. Our ego defines happiness in terms of acquisition and accumulation, end quote. So I want to share another cartoon with you at this point. This one you recognize as Garfield. Some people search for enlightenment. I'm just happy to find the remote. So sometimes our happiness is in the little things, not the big things, but just small things that come together to bring us happiness. Not too long ago, Reverend Patty Uzuki, who some of you may know, she gave a presentation on Zoom about happiness. And so I'll share with you some of her thoughts, particularly this next quote. She says, "We are conditioned to be unhappy. We are taught to strive for success and avoid failure. Blame ourselves when we don't live up to others' expectations. Social media allows us to compare ourselves with others who seem to be better off than we are." End quote. Such comparisons are facilitated by the popularity of social media, particularly, I think, among young people, but not just young people. Fear of failure, I think, is the cause of a lot of suffering for people, no matter their age, ethnicity, or nationality. We want to look good in the sight of others, so that fear of failure can really cause a lot of difficulty. The ego nurtures our cravings and desires. In our delusion, we see the bells and whistles which others have and think that's what we need to be happy. In an effort to be happy, we find solace in temporary pleasures that are fleeting. Such pleasures can lead to cravings for more of the same feelings that they generate. This, however, is not what happiness is about. And, the brief pleasures we get, we enjoy that feeling. And if we had our choice, we would be happy all the time. I like to quote Dr. Nobuo Haneda, who says, "Life is not about pluses and minuses, but we want all pluses and no minuses." That's not the way that life works. So going on, consumerism is widely promoted by nonstop advertisements to get us to buy stuff to make us happy, even though many of us already have plenty of stuff. We fall into the trap of materialistic greed when we rush to buy the newest, better, prettier, whatever. Once we have what we think will make us happy, we are shown something else that's even better to tempt us to accumulate more. What comes to my mind is the smartphone. Every time you get one, you think, oh, this is good. I like this. And next thing you know, there's another one. This is better than the one you have, so get this one. And so it goes on and on. And so we fall into that trap of materialistic greedism. So this is what happens. I don't know that you can read it. What the guy is on the couch with his therapist, and he says money can't buy happiness, but he can buy a lot of cool stuff to distract you from noticing how unhappy you are. And so I think that's what happens. We keep looking for the next thing that's going to make us happy, but we're looking for a lasting happiness. But we find out looking outside of ourselves for the elusive happiness leads to disappointment when what we thought would make us happy leaves us unfulfilled and longing for something else. Siddhartha Gautama, whose birthday we celebrated, last month. Oh, by the way, first day of May, we're in another month. Anyway, Siddhartha Gautama left his life of wealth to find a deeper meaning to the human existence. He awakened to the causes of human dissatisfaction. He characterized human suffering as dukkha, which can also be expressed as dissatisfaction, disappointment, or despair. In the first noble truths, the Buddha described greed, anger, and ignorance as the causes of dukkha. He also gave us the Eightfold Path to happiness as a way to cure our dukkha. Tupten, the author that I mentioned previously, finds dukkha to be a part of the human condition in these words: human beings are basically unhappy because of cravings and attachments that lead to disappointment, worries, anxieties, all that can be realized as human suffering. So it's a human condition. We know that things won't bring us happiness, but nonetheless, you know, I buy stuff and it, I like it, but it doesn't last. And so I can identify with accumulating, buying things or thinking that I need something when absolutely I do not. So now that we know what unhappiness is, or what causes unhappiness, so what leads to happiness? So I want to quote Tupten again. He writes, "The attainment of inner contentment as the path leading to true happiness. Inner contentment is achieved by letting go rather than accumulate." He continues, "Contentment is the inner state where attachment and fear are completely absent. In a state of contentment, desires for this or that cease. By letting go of desires and attachments, we can create more space for true happiness." I do want to say that Tupten leads a monastic life. And so when we look at letting go of attachments and desires, it's easier in some circumstances than it is in others. So this is our comic about letting go. The wise cat says, "You must learn to detach." But my husband pointed out something into this. He saw in this cartoon that I didn't see immediately. And that's the element of fear of letting go. So, you're hanging on like this, you need to let go, but what's going to happen if I let go? Maybe it'll be worse. So we cling to the things that perhaps are not bringing us happiness, but we're held there by the fear of letting go. So letting go is not an easy task, although we can see it can be seen as bringing about inner contentment. So if we let go, we have inner contentment, but it's not easy to let go. Tupten says our main attachment is to the delusion that we are a separate self. And I quote him, he says, "The ego is always comparing self with others because it believes itself to be a separate entity, and it uses the body as the dividing line between self and others. When we compare self to others, we are deluded into thinking that our body represents our true identity, and it needs to be improved in some superficial way to match others, to make it good, to make it better in the sight of others. And that is not where we're going to find true happiness. So if non-attachment is so important in attaining contentment, is it possible to give up attachments to everything in order to find contentment? And that's why I mentioned that Tupten is a monastic. But he understands. He goes on to say, it is impossible for us to give up everything, and that is all right. The Buddhists saw our inability to cease being deluded and therefore unable to let go of attachments, even when these attachments became a source of suffering. So the Buddha saw us. He saw us as being foolish beings filled with all the cravings and the greed and the ignorance that would lead to our suffering. And then also, I've mentioned attachment to things, but we're not only attached to things, but we can see evidence far and wide how there are attachments to ideas, to opinions that are just as harmful and cause just as much suffering. Non-attachment can help us not judge other people or our circumstances as good or bad. The Buddha's teachings are clearly expressed in this quote from the Dhammapada, and it's in our service book, and we've recited this many times, but it is, happiness follows sorrow. Sorrow follows happiness. But when one no longer discriminates between happiness and sorrow, a good deed and a bad deed, one is able to realize freedom. So in a sense, freedom and happiness in this sense are synonymous, being free of attachments. When we identify with conditions outside ourselves, we don't have a sense of everlasting happiness or inner contentment. By letting go of dualistic thinking, we can accept life as it is and not suffer when outcomes are unpleasant. And this is a really hard one for me, to be the same in circumstances, whether they're going the way I want them to or not. I tend to fall off into the pity me side, but I know when I fall over there, get up, get back, and keep going. Situations are constantly changing, and so are our perceptions. Another teaching of the Buddha is impermanence, and it's illustrated in this comic. This one, Fraz, and so the grass is being cut. Is cutting the grass fun? Fun? It's more of a Zen thing because it's peaceful, because it's temporary. There are no permanent phenomena. It is all temporary, including us. Everything is constantly changing. What is here one moment can quickly disappear. Trying to hold on to things and to keep them from changing leads to unhappiness. Quoting Tupten again, when we identify with conditions, we are always subject to sorrow and confusion, and there is no source of everlasting freedom. When we no longer identify with external conditions, we are in the realm of equanimity. And that's where we all, I think, at least that's where I aspire to be. I'll just speak for myself, trying to not let whatever circumstances are going on pull me to one side or the other. And so much of that has been happening in our nation and maybe around the world, where people are so divided. We know our attachments can lead to suffering, but our ego makes it very difficult to let go of attachments. Even our Shin Buddhist founder, Shinran Shonin, expressed his despair at not being able to free himself from attachments. In this quote, he says, "I know truly how grievous it is that I, Gotoko Shinran, am sinking in an immense ocean of desires and attachments, and am lost in vast mountains of fame and advantage, so that I rejoice not at all at entering the stage of the truly settled, and feel no happiness coming near the realization of true enlightenment. How ugly it is, how wretched. This sounds like very depressing, a very depressing state of being. But Shinran goes on and says, nevertheless, the Buddha, knowing this beforehand, called us foolish beings possessed of blind passions, thus becoming aware that the compassionate vow of other power is indeed for the sake of ourselves, who are such beings. We find it all the more trustworthy. So even though the Buddha saw that we were filled with blind passions, or just the blind passions is the ignorance, being foolish, wanting to be in control of circumstances when they're clearly outside of our control. This is human nature. And so regardless, even though this is the way we are, there's hope. There is Amida Buddha, and that's why we come to temple. True happiness becomes possible even with not letting go of attachments. In Shin Buddhist practice, inner contentment is found by saying the name Namo Amida Butsu, knowing that we are accepted just as we are. We entrust ourselves to the great wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha, being assured we will be embraced and never let go, even though we are foolish beings possessed of attachments and cravings. This wisdom and compassion of Amida is what guides us in self-examination to be able to see our foolish nature. In addition, we listen to the Dharma for the guidance in our daily life. Self-examination is the process that allows us to move toward not discriminating between our outer conditions that are beyond our control. I can't get rid of my ego, and that is okay. The Buddha understood that the behavior of ego-driven human beings. So where does this leave us? If indeed we all desire happiness, can an attitude of don't worry, be happy lead us to happiness? Maintaining an attitude of don't worry, be happy relies on us entrusting ourselves to Amida Buddha's vow to embrace foolish beings like ourselves. It is the feeling of gratitude for the Buddha's compassion that brings us happiness. Then Bob Marley's song, Every Little Thing's Gonna Be All Right, can ring true by knowing that Amida Buddha has our back just as we are. So let me end by summarizing what I hope are the relevant thoughts about a true life of happiness. When I was reading this to my husband, he says, it's good, but you covered a lot of stuff there. So I hope I haven't overloaded you with details. But anyway, so the points that I'd like to leave you with, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. However, it is important to understand the meaning of true happiness and how to find it through inner contentment. Since we're not yet a Buddha, we accept that it is impossible to give up all desires and attachments. Self-examination and hearing the Dharma helps us to lessen the impact of suffering. We let go of comparing oneself to others. We are enough just as we are. Don't be deluded by thinking acquiring things and monetary pleasures can bring true happiness. Aim toward the middle way path of equanimity, which provides freedom from dualistic perceptions of outer conditions as good or bad. In Shin Buddhist practice, don't worry, be happy becomes a reality when we entrust ourselves to the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. We joyfully say Namo Amida Butsu. So I will close with a reassuring passage from the collected works of Shinran. So join me in Gasho as I read. The light of compassion illumines us from afar. Those beings it reaches, it is taught, attain the joy of Dharma. So take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. Don't worry, be happy. Amida Buddha has our back. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Thank you.
Raza, I don't know how you do it, but you do pull it all together. Thank you so much for keeping it real. And I'm so grateful to be on the path with you. And if there's one thing I would say about you, and I think everyone here would say the same, there's a quote, in the midst of winter, there lies within me an invincible summer. And I feel like that's the essence of who you are, is that you always gravitate back towards that joyful heart, even in the midst of winter. So thank you for reminding us as we share the Dharma path with you about those things. So if you could please turn to page 26 in your service book and read together the loving kindness metta meditation. Page 26 and on screen for those of you that are virtual. Loving kindness metta meditation. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May I be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to me. May I live in peace and harmony. May my family be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my teachers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my friends be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May strangers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my enemies be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. So at this time, just a few announcements. And I can't see from here. Is it the upcoming events first? Yes, okay. So next Sunday, May 8th at 10 a.m. is our Mother's Day Dharma service. And I think a lot of us look forward to that. It's just a nice reason to gather together. And then the following Sunday, May 15th, is the Gotani Shinran Shonen's birthday. To attend service in person, you may make a reservation through the weekly email link, and you may also call the temple office and leave a message. There's a limited capacity of 50 members. And then Zoom links will continue to be emailed for those who'd like to join online. And then the regularly scheduled events, we've got the online mindfulness and Shin Buddhism on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for Zoom. And that's the meditation, chanting, and listening and reflection, as well as the online Dharma recovery, which is on Sundays at 12:30, also online. And then the Dharma School Connection today and May 27th, today and May 22nd at 11:15, also online. And so if you have any information, contact the temple either through the email or telephone. That concludes this part of the service. If you'd please join me in Gasho. Nama Amida Butsu, Nama Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. So thank you to the folks that have joined us online. And thank you to all of you, and please stay.